The air at the training range was dry and restless, filled with the faint metallic tang of spent brass and the low rumble of muttered frustrations. 15 shots had gone downrange, and 15 had missed their mark. The recruits shifted uncomfortably in their places, some hiding smirks, others shaking their heads. The range officer, a broad-shouldered man with a voice like gravel, barked the words that carried across the silence. "Any snipers here?" His question hung in the air, half taunt, half desperate plea for someone to prove this exercise wasn't a complete failure. And that was when the quiet girl, the one everyone barely noticed, lifted her hand. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. Her name was Claire. She joined the program without fanfare, her file unremarkable compared to others. No medals, no combat experience, no impressive lineage, just determination written in subtle ways. In the way she showed up earlier than most, stayed later, and never once complained when her turn was overlooked. She had the kind of face people forgot the moment she left the room, and in a place where bravado and noise often earned attention, her silence became a cloak. Yet in that silence, she carried memories of a father who had once placed a small hunting rifle in her hands, whispering that patience could matter more than strength. The recruits around her chuckled when she stepped forward. A couple of them exchanged knowing glances, not cruel, but dismissive. The officer raised an eyebrow, perhaps expecting another wasted shot, perhaps already preparing a sharp remark. The wind picked up slightly, carrying a faint whistle over the barren range. Dust rose, catching the sunlight, creating a haze that made the far target shimmer in the distance. It wasn't just far. It was impossibly far, 4,200 yards, a range where bullets seemed to fade into the horizon before ever touching steel. Claire lay prone, her cheek settling against the rifle stock, with a natural familiarity that caught the officer's attention. She adjusted her scope slowly, not rushing, her fingers delicate but certain. In her mind, she replayed every lesson her father had taught her. Every hour she had spent lying in tall grass, listening to the rhythm of her own breathing, while deer slipped unseen between trees. Back then, it wasn't about killing. It was about respect. Respect for distance, respect for silence, respect for life. The murmurs of the crowd grew quieter. They watched the way her body stilled. No tremor, no wasted motion. She was not showing off. She was simply being. And then, with the world narrowed to the trigger beneath her fingertip and the dancing glint of the steel plate far beyond human sight, she exhaled. The crack of the shot ripped through the air. A long pause followed. Too long. Some smirked again, ready to dismiss it as another miss. Then, faint but undeniable, the sharp metallic ping of impact echoed back across the field. For a heartbeat, no one moved. And then whispers turned into gasps, and gasps into stunned silence. Claire had done what 15 others could not, but she wasn't finished. She cycled the bolt, her movements as fluid as water, and sent another round downrange. Another pause, another ping. A third, a fourth. Each hit rang truer than the last, until the once skeptical recruits found themselves leaning forward, holding their breath, watching a girl who had stepped from the shadows into something far larger. When the final shot struck, the silence broke into an eruption of applause and shouts. Even the officer, stern and weathered, could not hide the flicker of pride tugging at his mouth. Claire lowered the rifle gently, almost reverently, and for a moment she did not smile. Instead, her eyes drifted across the horizon where the target stood alone in the distance. She thought of her father. He'd passed away years ago, never knowing she would choose this path. But in her chest, she felt as though he had been there, whispering steady patience into her heartbeat. The officer approached, his boots crunching in the dirt. He stopped beside her, voice low, meant for her more than for the others. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" She hesitated, then simply replied, patience. It wasn't a boast. It wasn't a secret. It was just the truth. The recruits looked at her differently now. Respect replaced doubt, but along with respect came questions. Some wondered if they had underestimated her, or perhaps themselves. Others wrestled with something deeper. The discomfort of realizing that greatness often hides in silence, waiting for the right moment. And in that realization was a question of pride. Had they judged her because she was quiet, or because they feared what quiet might reveal about themselves? Claire felt the weight of their stares, but she didn't bask in it. She wasn't seeking admiration. Instead, she thought of the balance that shooting had always represented. Life, death, distance, time. It was all too easy to forget the fragility of what lay at the other end of a rifle's scope. And in that moment, she wondered whether proving herself had been enough, or whether the responsibility her skill carried would one day cost her something far heavier than applause. The applause eventually faded. The dust settled, yet something had shifted in that training range. The recruits would talk about it for days, then weeks, then years. The day the quiet girl answered the officer's question, and though Claire returned to her silence, the memory of her shots echoed in every mind present, not as noise, but as a reminder. Because in life, brilliance doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waits in stillness, revealing itself only when doubt leaves no other choice. Because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. And sometimes, so does greatness. If this story moved you, let me know your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of hidden courage and quiet strength. Who knows? The next one might just change the way you see the world.